Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where on the planet you are. This is another webinar about the WEBCON way. Specifically, this one is all about why one should automate one's accounts payable process. And I need to give you a warning before we begin. This is not a geek out session. There might be a little bit of geekery, a few details that we provide near the end, particularly in Q&A in case somebody wants to know something about how this all works. If you've got questions, by all means, type them into the chat window. I will try and address them as best as I can, probably near the end. And with that, why don't we get started? Accounts payable is perfect for process management. Absolutely. In fact, look, there are a number of human resources related processes that are probably an even more natural fit, but accounts payable is so perfect for process management. If I fixate on it too much, I stop thinking about other things. It's just such a perfect fit. And let's dive in just a minute as to why it's such a perfect fit. It's because there's an immediate desire on just about everyone's part to reduce or eliminate paperwork. And yes, look, when I see the word paperwork, when we at WEBCON talk about it, when other companies refer to eliminating paperwork, my initial reaction is paperwork. This is 2020. Who does anything on paper anymore? As it turns out, a lot of people do a lot of things on paper. Paper-based invoices remain a thing. Paper-based documents remain a thing. Paper-based lots of things remain a thing. They're real, they're true, they happen all the time. And in fact, it's extra true when we're talking about transactional documents. And in the legal profession and in the financial and accounting professions, as it turns out, paper still carries extra weight, and something known as a wet signature matters more than one might think. So yeah, when we talk about eliminating paperwork, we mean it literally, but we don't only mean it literally. You see, we also want to eliminate paper thinking. This is actually kind of important. When we talk about getting rid of paper thinking, it's not only doing things better, but doing better things. Let me illustrate. It's not just about digitizing the steps, because if I were just going to digitize the steps, I would still have a fairly manual process. I would have something along the lines of, look, something comes in on email and it contains an attached invoice as a PDF document or maybe as a spreadsheet. Or I may get something that is physical. And so it's a piece of paper. I might want to scan it and turn it into an image, interactively one at a time, something along those lines. This happens for real all the time. As a matter of fact, at WEBCON, I'll tell you exactly what we do or what we did before we automated the entire thing. A long time ago, what would happen is the person that receives all of our invoices would get a document, and then she would wind up routing the document to whomever she thought was responsible for okaying the purchase, and whoever that was needed to write down on the back of the invoice what the proper cost center was, what the proper allocation codes were, et cetera, et cetera. And if there was more than one person, then they'd need to make manual notes as to what to do. And then finally, if we wanted the digital copy of it, we'd scan the thing. But ultimately, and that was sort of optional, ultimately, it's all about one person grabbing either discrete electronic documents or discrete physical documents, looking at a lot of annotations that have been made, and then sitting at some sort of authoritative accounting system. This could be SAP, this could be Dynamics AX, Dynamics GP, NetSuite. I don't really care which one of these. almost every organization of a certain size has something like this. You could think of it as a beast to be fed, or you could think of it as a system of record. I actually think of it as all of the above. Among other things, it's necessary. Ultimately, things need to wind up here. If they don't, we're in trouble. But all this needs to go through verifications and so on. And what happens is a lot of email traffic, even if we're working with things that look like this, as opposed to things that look like this. Well, guess what? It's still manual. And we would prefer that it didn't have to be manual. So what we want to do is improve the process. An improvement to the processing is the ultimate goal of doing this kind of thing. Now, what do we mean by processing? Well, it's a whole set of things, from receipts to verifications to approvals to cost breakdowns to payments to record keeping. And the nice thing about all of this is it is quite easy to map this into a well-explicated, well-formalized, well-understood business process. In fact, it might not be a bad idea to show it to you in action right here, right now. Because invoices ideally are the kinds of things that we could approve in messy, multi-threaded ways that are nevertheless turned into something elegant and really, really pleasant. Here, let's have at it. Okay, a couple of things that you need to understand before we go much further is I'm going to do a demo, and I'm going to do a demo that involves workflow, and that typically involves multiple people being involved in the process. And I've got 4 different people here. These 4 browsers, they have different colors. They have different little icons next to them. They're all copies of Google Chrome. They could be copies of Microsoft Edge. I love everybody. I just happen to have all the profiles set up in Chrome in advance. Now, the deal here is, here I'm logged in. You'll see yellow. I'm logged in as someone named Mike. But I could also be over here in dark blue logged in as some guy named Luke, and so on and so forth. There are multiple identities here, but we're going to begin this demonstration with me acting as Mike. And whoops, my mistake. That's an extra keystroke there. This is what I wanted to show you. This is my dashboard when I'm working in cost approval land. But to tell you the truth, I'm ahead of myself. I'm making a fundamental assumption that that I live my life going from application to application. I don't really do that. I live my life out of Outlook, and I tend to respond to requests that show up in my inbox. And it just so happens that I've got a request right here telling me that I've got a new task. In fact, let's open this. I've got a new task. It is it's an invoice that needs to be approved from the client named Platinum. And let's see, there's a bunch of detail about the invoice. What it really is expecting me to do is click on this button to open up the application. But in truth, because I have our Outlook add-in set up here, I could really work completely out of the sidebar and never need to open up an extra piece of software to work on this. I'm just loading the form and showing it in compact single column view. This is very similar to the way the form would look if we were looking at it in our mobile application. And, you know, I kind of like this. And if I were doing this by myself, I would be perfectly happy to work out of this tiny corner of the screen because I can see everything I need here just fine. This, however, occurs to me would be a terrible thing to show you because you're probably not watching this full screen. And to ask you to focus in on just one small section of the screen isn't very helpful. I'm going to open this up and really look at it in a single pane. I think it's a better idea in this particular case. So this is that exact same form, but I'm looking at it in 2 columns now. And this allows me a bit of breathing room to show you some really cool stuff. not the least of which is, we're showing you not just the invoice that needs to get worked on, and we're going to work on it in just a moment, but I am also looking at, let's see, I'm looking at a bunch of stuff here, not the least of which is the step that we're in at the moment. So I noticed that this is, oh, this has been archived. I think I have opened, oh, no, that's right. That's right. Am I in the right place? My apologies, gang. This one's been done. I opened the wrong item. That's fine. Let's do this. Just so that you can follow what's going on, I opened the wrong one of these items. This is an item that has already been completed. What I really should have done is opened up one of the other ones. This one is a new task, I believe, and this just came in, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do, especially when we edit the recording of this. I'm just going to jump very quickly to having opened this. This is the item that we wanted to, okay. Everybody pretend that when I clicked on the button in the email message, I came to this form. And we'll all agree to forget that I opened the wrong email message. All right, let's move on. One of the things that's worth taking a look at when you look at the overall thing is we can see which step in the process we're in. We've gone ahead and added this indicator along the top, so you can see that it's already been registered and scanned, and now it's being reviewed by a business owner. But we've done this graphically. This is an optional thing. We always have built into the system the ability to show you exactly where you stand in the process over here along the side. You can make this go away if this is too much information. I like it though. And in fact, what I really like is sometimes taking a look at the whole thing graphically. So here's the process and here's where we are right now. I like that a lot. I can also see that this has been assigned to me. It's also been assigned to someone else, but and they're assigned to it. They have a different set of tasks they need to complete. It's all well and good. So my job at this point is to provide the analytical description for the document. What I need to do is break down the cost assignments. And I've got a couple of ways that I can do this. I have quite a lot of options available to me. I can see details about the dates, the registration, the vendor. Basically, I have a lot of information available to me, including taking a peek at the invoice itself, which is quite handy sometimes. However, the nice thing about it is someone has already scanned this. I'm going to go back later and show you how we get the scanned image and turn it into a proper form. But I thought we'd start from the point of view of the manager first, and then pivot to taking a look at what it's like for a task worker or someone in finance receiving the invoice in the first place. That will come. So I've got an invoice here. I need to provide some cost assignments. I need to classify and categorize this document in a couple of different ways. And I have a number of fun options. Not the least of which is to take a related purchase order. If I think that this PO is related to this one, I could break down the allocations just by copying them out of this item. Or even if there's no relationship whatsoever, I could just take whatever the previous invoice is, whatever it may be, and grab the allocations that we used there and apply them right here. This is kind of fun. I like this, except this is too easy. I just want to make sure that you understand that are going out of our way to provide options to a manager to do as little work as possible. So if it turns out this is one of several purchase orders that should all be treated the same way, you can look at what you did last time and do it again to this one. I don't want to do that this time, though. And by the way, if we have a particularly interesting allocation scheme that we've placed inside an Excel file, I can just import the Excel file into this table and go with it that way. I suppose in a really complex invoice, I might really like that. In fact, if we've got more than just a cost center and a manager that needs to be added to this, I might care about that very deeply. However, for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to say that we will allocate, let's see, what would be a good idea? How about we say the creative department? And by default, the manager of the creative department is, well, me. And we're going to allocate not 100% of the charges in this invoice to the creative department. We'll allocate 50% of the charges in this particular invoice to the creative department. There are some other things here. This is a services company, and they do a variety of R&D things for us. So what I'm going to do is say that we'll take on 50% for the creative department, and the other 50%, I'm doing that. That's going to finance because they're doing things here too. All right. So finance takes 50% and we will take 50%, and good. I'm good with that. Let's move this on and we'll get the costs to be described in greater detail, but we have allocated this in terms of who owns the charges. Now let's move this on. All right, now it's time to switch over to the right person whose job it is to complete this task. And I've got a couple of different ways. Again, I could look at pending tasks for me, or I could just look at all tasks queued up for me, but I'm gonna open up this item that's been allocated to me now. Remember, it's been given to me and it's been given to Luke. We each have this on our desktops waiting for us to complete. I'm going to do my part, however. And as I do my part, the key here is I need to take my involvement in this in the creative department and indicate what types of costs they are. If anyone has dealt with invoices in the past, you know full well that you're going to need to categorize this in many different ways. An extremely regulated or bureaucratic or sophisticated organizations, it's going to be a lot more than just a cost center, a manager, and a cost type. But we'll stick with this. So in my department, the creative department, notice that this is grayed out. I don't get to touch what's going on in the finance department. I need to choose what we're doing. So I'm going to say that research and development is going to be what this invoice was about. And it was, in all fairness. The thing is, though, it wasn't only research and development. It was maybe 25% of the entire thing was research and development. I need to add a little bit more. Now, this is also going to come out from one of my departments. This is a filtered list. And I'm going to say that another bit of what they did involved taking care of some administrative details for me. So I'm going to file it under administration expenses. So there we go. I don't really have anything else to do. What I do want you to note is that I'm working on this in one place, and at the exact same time, my colleague Luke is working on the same item over here. Same form, same everything. We'll rejoin that in progress in just a moment. I'm going to come back here and finish my work first. All right, so I think I'm ready to go. Sorry about that interruption. Here we go. I could say this is not my invoice. You've made a mistake. Return it to the mailroom and reallocate it to the right person. And I could also save this and come back to it if I think I've figured out, yeah, part of this is going to be R&D, but I really am not sure what the other part is. I need to go ask somebody. You don't need to do this all at once. But no, in this particular case, everything is good. All right, now notice that the status message up here is saying that the workflow instance has been updated and we're waiting for other users to perform their tasks. This is normally a message that appears in green to let you know that your work is finished. This time, however, we know that we're not finished. We've got a little bit more to do. And so I'm going to come over here and be Luke. And if I reload this form, I should see that it is open now. And in fact, let's view this full screen. It'll be a little bit clearer. There we go. We're in the cost breakdown stage, and you can see the work that that Mike already did. And like I said, whoever grabs this first can work on it. And if we organize the workflow a little bit differently, they could even have it open at the exact same time. As it stands, it's been allocated to the two of them, but one of them will open it, lock it, unlock it, and move on. In our particular world, we want Luke to see what I did to it. We don't want the whole thing to be in a vacuum. So to make each other aware of what each other is doing, we treat it like Microsoft does online with Word and Excel files, where you might lock a cell or lock a paragraph. We're kind of doing it like that. We're locking rows in a column. So here we go. Finance department. They also did some research and development, and it's a different code, of course, and we're good here. I don't think there's anything else I desperately need to do. No, that's it. Confirm the description and approve. Okay, all done. So now Luke can go about his business and so on. What Mike might want to do, since he's probably monitoring the whole thing, actually he is not. At this point, Mike has washed his hands of it. Luke, however, still has this thing open. And Luke can see that, yep, it's been allocated, and we've moved on to accounting control. And this is now in the hands of, well, Luke again, but this is another one of those coincidences. Luke happens to be the head of finance, which actually gives him some powers that he wouldn't normally have. If we pretend for the moment that someone other than Luke was heading up finance, or that finance wasn't one of the cost centers affected by this invoice, it would possibly be slightly more instructive. What I want you to think is Luke, in his role of being a manager, already broke down what the costs were for this. Now Luke, as the head of accounting, is giving this a final scrutinization to make sure that everything is correct. And it just so happens everything is not correct. We need to make a few changes. We even need to make a few changes here in some of the details that we think of as set in stone. Yeah, I can certainly provide a description if I want to, but it turns out that there are a couple of things that I'm not thrilled with, including this delivery date, because this delivery date was not on the 30th. This bill is for work that was done much earlier than that. I need to go here into administrative mode. And this is not technical or system administration. This is business administration. This just means someone with the appropriate privileges to do whatever must be done. And the delivery date was not on the 30th of this month. It was on the 2nd of this month. All right, and let's save it and move on, and in fact get out of administrative mode, because I only want to spend time in there when I really need to. I still have some changes that need to be made just as part of my normal process, and that is fixing other people's mistakes. Because look, I could reject this or I could return this to Mike and ask for an explanation because he has screwed up. This is not supposed to be administration expenses. However, again, I'm the head of finance. I know what's going on. I'm not going to return this and give him the equivalent of a rap across the knuckles. What I am instead going to do is just make this right. It should not be administration expenses. It should be overhead. It's fine. This is easy. It's a simple thing for us to do. So, and in fact, you know what I want to do here? I've told him about this in the past. And so what I think I want to do here is find one of those emails where I told him what it is he needed to do and make sure he's got a copy as to what is what. So I'm adding an email with some clarification as to what is going on to this invoice case. It'll become part of the official record as to what's going on. All right. Now we can, and by the way, if I needed to send off an email with a question and then gotten back a response, I could always throw the email that proves something and drops it, and I could drop it into here. The possibilities abound. Now I'm going to click approve now, and we will move on. Oh, you know something? Before no, let's do that. Now we've got a number of things going on that I'd like to take a look at here. Let's take a look at what was just done. I would kind of like to see a couple of changes that were made. And I have lots of options for doing that. You know what I think I will do? I'm going to open this, which is something that's already in progress, and take a look at the history behind it. Because it occurs to me I might want to have seen what changes someone else made as it goes on. Because this is an item, it's a different invoice, but what I wanted to see is what changes people made as it evolved. So what I am noticing here is that, okay, at a certain point, someone threw in some allocations, but at a certain point, someone made changes to the attachments. In fact, they have removed, and I'm not really sure about why this is, but someone removed one of the pieces of supporting documentation. Maybe it was the wrong scanned image. Not really sure. I will open this up and take a peek as to exactly what took place. And there's the new allocation scheme. Essentially, in fact, you know what? Sometimes it's handier to take a look at what the item looked like at the very, very beginning, and then just start moving through the process and looking at what the form looked like at every single step along the way. It can be extremely handy to do it this way. And as I keep moving throughout the different steps, I see what every single person did. It's an extremely powerful way to get this done. But anyway, at a certain point, the whole thing is closed out, and the invoice for the client named Platinum has been approved and moved on and registered with our system of record. And that's where I wanted to go with that. That's probably enough demo for the moment. We're not done, but that's demo number one. What I want to talk about are things like dotting I's and crossing T's. And you just saw one that I kind of did a little bit early, which is being able to monitor what happened and audit what happened and escalate things in case they weren't done properly or some exceptions need to be dealt with, or monitoring deadlines or enforcing policies or reporting on things. All of these matter a lot. And it's one thing to just manage the data. It's another thing to make sure that what you're using to manage the data and follow through a process is able to deal with all of these different kinds of things. You already saw us take a peek at auditing what happened to a particular item. Well, and you already saw some monitoring going on in terms of where something was and who has it. You've even seen a couple of buttons for escalating an exceptional case. Here, let me open this item up so you can see what I'm talking about. If I think something is wrong, I can just return it to registration. If I think everything is fine, I can open it up. We will make sure that if we're going to do some allocations, that I can't move this along further without actually doing this work. So there's a lot of things to make sure that I don't make a data entry error. There are a lot of things that make sure I don't do procedural errors. There are a lot of things here to make sure that, well, that I'm well behaved across the board. But what I would like to do even more is analyze what's going on in a very, very detailed way so that I understand the ramifications of what's taking place. So how about I do this? Right here, I'm looking at a whole bunch of activity over a period of time. I'm looking at incoming tasks for me to deal with. These are invoices I either need to approve or provide cost breakdowns on. But if I would like to, I could take a look at all invoices, or the ones that have been paid, or the ones that have been OCR'd as opposed to emailed around. Here's this one we just did a few moments ago, this one for platinum. And if I open this up, it is complete, but if I want to, for some reason, take a look at the history around it, I can notice that a number of changes have been made over a period of time. Among other things, look, extra things have been done in terms of attachments. That's when I added the email message to it. Also, a couple of instructional messages took place. A couple of changes happened. Notice here where the delivery date changed from 11/30 to 11/2. And by the way, again, if things happened in the details in the allocations, you can always open this up and notice that this was added. The extra categorization of research and development for the finance department was added at that point. There are lots of different ways to see exactly what happened, exactly when, and exactly by whom. That's if you want to drill down on one item at a time. If you want to see where it is at the moment, you could see this detail here or here. This is one quick form field that we can add without doing a ton of work that allows you to get a big picture thing. Some people love this. Some people find it cluttery. No matter what, you always get this information down here along the side, but this looks more fun. I like it. All right, a couple of other things worth taking a peek at. Luke is in charge of the finance department, and we can look at individual reports as much as we'd like, but I'd like to look at unified dashboards. So how about we take a look at, let's see, the financial department's view of the universe. So here's our cash flow. Here's our cost per department. Here are invoices to be paid. There's a lot of detail here, and this gives me the information I care about. Similarly, there's the information that the board might find interesting, like what's the value per month of all the expenditures that we're doing, and what are different departments responsible over a period of time. I care about all of that. So whether I'm looking at individual invoices and inspecting the individual trees, or whether I want the big picture and to look at the entire forest, I've got what I need. And by the way, everyone has the option of doing this to some extent, or might, depends on what we've allowed people to do. I have a similar ability to take a look at a dashboard. I have a similar ability to look at invoices as Mike, but I have far fewer that I can take a look at. Luke had multiple pages. I've got simply 3. Luke saw every department in the entire organization, but if I look at the financial breakdown, I'm only going to see departments that I have some permissions to visualize. So I get the information I'm allowed to see. Luke gets the information he's allowed to see. Everybody wins. A couple of other things are important. Oh, and that was the demo that you just saw. Paper invoices, or dealing with the invoices themselves. Remember when I said we'd wait until later to talk about the invoices that we receive? I started immediately from the point of view of a manager taking a an invoice and then working on it. Let's start at the very, very beginning in the process. When we get something in the form of paper, here's how we handle this kind of thing. The very first thing we can do is scan it. And if the output of the scanning goes into a common area, the act of scanning it causes a workflow to kick off, and we'll OCR that thing immediately. And then we'll take the OCR text and fill out the workflow processes form in good faith as much as we dutifully can. And the process, well, actually, we'll look at the process in just a moment. But yeah, we'll use OCR plus AI to dutifully fill out the form entry as best as we can. Someone will need to correct it, uh, possibly. It just depends. In fact, look, I'm going to show you what it looks like right now. I have a slide coming up called demo, but I kind of want to do this immediately. Here is an item that needs to get validated. And this is one that's already in pretty decent shape. So let's not do that one. Let's pick one that I think is not quite correct. Here we go. Yeah, this also came from Platinum. And well, let's not do Platinum. I want to save that one for later. Let's do this. All right. I have an invoice. I've already scanned it. And the very first step in the process, what I've saved until now, is for somebody to take a look at the scanned image and make sure that we filled it out correctly. So if it turned out that the invoice number that they've lifted is coming from the wrong place, I can point to the right one and we can fix it. If the date of the invoice is not correct, in this particular case, it is. What about the due date? Do I see a due date in here? Here. The due date is this. And that just changed that accordingly. If I got the currency wrong, that can be fixed. But I can point to things that that show up here and use them. And what's more, as I do this multiple times, we will wind up learning from this and doing a better job of it next time. And so when I get all of this to the point where I'm really, really happy with it, then I can submit the whole thing and move it to the point where we started our demo, which is having someone analyze it and do a cost breakdown on it. But yeah, when things come in, we'll do our level best to get it right automatically. And you saw from some of those other examples that we largely get it right. But occasionally when we've got one or two details wrong, we allow you, a human being, to check our work and do the right thing with it. That's a nice thing. That's the AI form entry. Now, this is an unexpected paper invoice where we basically said when you scan, it goes into a monitored folder, and then we kick off a workflow process immediately from that. And a lot of you might be quite happy with this. And I get that. That would be a completely unexpected paper invoice. But for things that are expected or even unexpected where you add a little bit more to the process, there's a payoff. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I might very well want to begin when I receive an invoice by opening a new case, opening a new invoice item or workflow instance and creating the form in advance. And then what I do is generate a barcode label and slap that onto the invoice. And then I'll scan it. And then it'll get OCR'd. And then we'll use AI to fill out the form. But there's an advantage to doing it this way. One, there's already an item out there that if for some reason we're delayed in scanning it, we know that there's something we're waiting to have completed. The invoice won't get lost because this will be empty and missing an attachment, and we'll know there's a problem. There's another big payoff to doing it this way. I can take that barcode and slap it on that document and then scan it and everything. But when I'm done, I keep the whole thing together as a physical asset. And remember, the invoice item that we've got in the accounting system contains a reference to this barcode. So file it according to the barcode, and I can always go find this invoice later, the physical invoice. Again, sometimes paper matters. And what we're doing is allowing electronic records to refer to physical records in a way that allows everybody to win. Unexpected email invoices, I suppose even expected ones, same kind of deal, except I don't need to do any scanning. So what I typically get is I can forward an invoice that came in over email to a monitored mailbox, automatically monitored mailbox, where we automatically pick up the attachments, OCR them, and create new workflow instances. And again, just as if it were a scanned image, we apply AI to the OCR text and drop those values directly into a scanned image. Again, everybody wins. In fact, you even have the option of doing it in a completely manual fashion. And sometimes there's some value to that. This is a completely different person. Powder blue, the name is employee. And let's just have the employee register an incoming invoice. So at this point, they'll take either an item that came in email or just a physical thing that was given to them, and we'll attach it quite manually. So let's just add an attachment. This is old school, but sometimes you illustrate useful things by going old school. So here's that test invoice. And here is our ability to start describing everything about it, including the date of the registration. That's today. The date of delivery, well, no, that was at the end of last month. And I can register this and proceed to scanning, or I can register this without scanning. If I do this, we'll generate a barcode label. And then I will, we'll go ahead and OCR this and move along. But because I've already got a scanned image here, I'm going to register it without scanning. And now it is my job to open this thing up and start making allocations to it. Like I said, one way or another, everybody wins this way. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about why the way we do it is so important, and why we do a couple of things you might not have expected, not the least of which is, why am I reporting on some financial numbers out of the workflow system as opposed to that authoritative accounting system of record? I've got a very good explanation for it, and here it is. IT attempts to help with a lot of processes are based on a couple of natural impulses that they came across honestly. Honest impulse number one is to find and use a piece of packaged software for it. Now, the dream, the belief, the hope is that the software will fit the problem hand in glove perfectly. The reality, on the other hand, is that it often requires you to put a square peg in a round hole and not have a very good time, or conform your processes to what the software is capable of doing. Sometimes that involves many, many extra steps. Sometimes that involves unpleasant steps. Sometimes that involves more manual work than you might think, or unpleasant looking forms, or lots of extra licenses. To allow somebody to scan an invoice requires the same level of licensing as somebody that reviews financial statistics all day long. We can offer something else instead. So if packaged software isn't quite right, it can also be expensive, I suppose, and isn't quite hand in glove, one other natural impulse is to commission the creation of custom software and to have somebody look at requirements and build something that's exacting and specific to your needs. And yeah, there's a lot to be said for that in many ways, except for the fact that it involves quite a lot of waiting and quite a lot of money. And for that matter, when the finished result is there, it was probably exactly what you asked for, but it's not going to be the most flexible thing in the world to change when invariably you realize there's something you forgot to ask for, or laws or accounting policies change, or any of a number of things require you to react. Custom code is not the most flexible thing in the world. And yeah, we can do better. So what I would suggest is ignoring the impulses and optimizing. When I say optimize, I mean, look, let's acknowledge the fact that the accounting or official accounting system of record absolutely exists. And you're going to use it for authoritative data and permanent records and to actually execute on the payments. Anything that's highly standardized, yes, make sure that that is faithfully obeyed and faithfully used. However, think of something a bit more flexible, a bit more business process focused, a bit less monolithic data focused. Think of something like WEBCON and use this for user interaction, tracking progress on what's going on, scheduling activity, and essentially a vehicle for handling flexibility. Workflow is business process automation are flexible by their inherent nature. Monolithic financial systems and enterprise resource planning systems tend to be far more focused on being a system of record than a system of innovation. And that's okay. They can work together very nicely. It's entirely possible to have, for example, let's say this is SAP. SAP can feed WEBCON dictionaries, all those lookups that you saw, accounting codes, cost centers, any of those things. Those weren't things we were maintaining ourselves. That was data we were actually being fed from the financial management system. We're not duplicating work in any way. And when you've finished routing something around and getting a lot of decisions made in a far more flexible and friendly fashion, take those transactions or those instructions and send them in bulk batches back to SAP or back to NetSuite or back to Exapta or Great Plains or what have you. Make it work the way you want. They can work together extremely nicely, and it's in fact the best of all possible worlds. This is a flexible and adaptable process. And this flexible and adaptable process is not just, it's also a standardized process that can be used with more than one system of record. This is another thing. And this is why I was talking about preferring to look at this kind of a report in this kind of place. If I have one standardized process for the entire company for how we handle registering invoices, getting them approved, getting costs broken down, running them through accounting controls, and paying them, and then archiving them in a standardized way. If it turns out that the way they're paid varies considerably based on where we are in our organization, that's okay. It's entirely possible to have one process work with 3 different accounting systems or ERP systems or line of business applications in different parts of the world. So if Asia Pacific uses SAP, fine, we'll harvest dictionaries from SAP and use them in the forms as we move through here. And at the end, here where this gear is, that involves sending instructions to SAP to make the payment. Or in EMEA, maybe we're doing that with Great Plains AX, and same kind of stuff is being done. But I'm using the same process with a different line of business application. And in North America, we might use NetSuite. And this is just an example. But we have successfully used WEBCON BPS with all 3 of these systems in the past, and it works quite nicely. And it just so happens that I can use one process across 3 different lines of business. And it could very well be that I don't want to use SAP everywhere, and I certainly might not want to use NetSuite everywhere as well. I'm going to have very good reasons for using 3 different lines of business, line of business applications. But I want one standardized process, because this is kind of like rendering unto Caesar, to use a biblical metaphor. This is like rendering unto God. God is us. Our company works this way. Our company uses these things to make sure that we're doing the right things in terms of accounting standards and the right things in terms of government regulation standards. But when I care about my cost breakdowns and I care about how we're doing, I want the big picture. I want to see everything, and I want to see it the way we care about it. I want to see it like this. It's also a lot easier to build these kinds of dashboards and change them on the fly. In fact, let's get to that. We will assist where it matters most. We'll assist with document input, document output, and correspondence and routing. And that includes facilitating things like notifications and assigning tasks and awaiting completions and making it easy to do allocations and other kinds of data entry. We will facilitate all of these things: input, output, and throughput. Again, best of all possible worlds. But it's not just automation, it's also about assurance that the right kinds of things are happening. For example, handling details like delegation of tasks. How are you going to handle something like when someone goes on vacation? Or better still, no, that's coming up in a second. What we're talking about here is the wrong thing was sent to me. It should be handled by somebody else. Do I need to write into my application logic how to make that happen? Or does the system for handling the process already know how to do those kinds of things and have the ability to delegate a task to a different person built in? Substitutions, that would be the vacation scenario. I'm gone for a couple of weeks. Someone's taking over my duties. The duties that they might be taking over might vary. Who's doing it might vary depending on which process it is. Do we have a system for setting that up, or do I have to code it or low code it or no code it myself? Or does the platform provide it out of the box? Well, we do. Same thing with oversight, making sure that people can see each other's work and report on, again, subject to policies and laws and so on. And then finally, privacy. Have we thought through all the details that are necessary to conform to GDPR standards and other kinds of policies that involve privacy and security? We handle so many of these things at the platform level so that when you write the instructions for or the schema for a form or write out a business process, you don't have to deal with this stuff. We did it already. It's built in, it's in the box. You just use it. The other thing that's special about WEBCON that's absolutely worth taking a look at is our embracing of change. Instant change is a trademark term we invented, and look, here's why you need instant change. It's because the rules that you have to follow change on a regular basis. The preferences that you have change on a regular basis. The policies you're required to follow change on a regular basis, which means writing an application once is not good enough. There's no such thing as an application that's static. Applications must change. And making your application as change-friendly as possible, that's where WEBCON uniquely excels. Here's how WEBCON handles it. When you tell us that you want to make a change to your application, the forms, the process logic, doesn't matter. The data schema, it's non-destructive. Nothing in the application as it's currently running is going to be harmed by a change coming in. In fact, it won't even be disruptive. In fact, it can happen mid-flight. If you decide that you want to change the steps that a process must go through, the instances that are already halfway finished will just gracefully change lanes and start doing the new things. It's a very rare feature, and we've made it easy and inexpensive. Instant change means I can change something without hurting anyone or even making them uncomfortable, and we'll just start following the new instructions once you've deployed the changes. In addition to all of that, here's what it means to you. It means that you can relax when you build something and it wasn't quite right. You can fix anything at any time. So try. You can evolve your solution in real time. There's not going to be a penalty for not being perfect. So you can get started right away and react to feedback promptly. It's a low risk proposition. In fact, you can even accommodate ambiguous requirements. Instead of asking people to imagine something in great detail that they haven't thought through in great detail, you can look at the ambiguous requirements, try it out, and if you got it wrong or didn't get it perfect, fix it. It can happen instantly. And it basically means that experimentation is okay. And the notion of saying experimentation is okay in the context of financial transactions, that would normally be a very scary thing, but not for us. It is perfectly okay to make sure that if you missed a step, to modify the process to ensure that the step gets taken care of. You can actually involve innovation and experimentation in a highly regimented business process, and it's going to be fine. You can relax. In terms of what a lot of our customers are doing with it, well, uh, you don't have to start from scratch. We actually have a number of ready to use applications that are available. You install them and they're already going to do the right work, but then you can start configuring them and modifying them. But if you configure them as is and plug them into your own system of record and whatnot, you can probably deploy them in less than 1 week and then kick off a cycle of continuous improvement. And if you want to do this in the cloud, either in a dedicated cloud environment or a multi-tenant software as a service environment, or if you want to do this on premises, we have consistent technology that works the same way in all 3 places. In fact, if you begin it on premises and move it to a dedicated cloud, that works fine. And you can move anything from anywhere to anywhere. And it doesn't end with accounts payable. Vendor maintenance processes, payment processes, purchases and agreements, sales invoices, just about anything can benefit from this approach to innovation. So there is a better way to do accounts payable. We call it the WEBCON way. And with that, thank you very, very much for attending this webinar. If you'd like to get more information on WEBCON itself, WEBCON BPS, the product, specific solutions that we have for finance departments or other departments or vertical or horizontal processes, by all means, come to www.webcon.com. All roads lead from there. Excuse me. That's just a dry throat. No one needs to worry about my health. And someone is asking a question. I would like to know about the steps indicator on top of the form. How is it prepared? Is it an HTML attribute? Yeah, I kind of figured we'd be geeking out at some point. Yes, it is one of the new HTML controls. We should probably do a technical webinar on that soon. But essentially, it is now possible to embed custom HTML in forms much more easily than it used to be, including custom JavaScript. And we even have a builder for it that allows you to access the application schema and the data in the whole thing. So it is possible to create very elaborate, clever HTML tricks, and we'll help you do it. And to go into more of that for a business audience is probably overkill. But if you want to ping me independently, I can point you to some knowledge-based articles on it. Mike Fitz at webcon.com. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure having you attend. Hope you enjoyed it. And we have another WEBCON webinar coming up in a couple of weeks on yet another line of business activity. Thanks very much. Have a great rest of your day.